Hey guys, I'm Jonas, and today we're going to take a look at this Predator swapped Club Car DS. Now, some of you guys may have seen some of the recent build series that we did where we swapped some Predator 670s into a couple of Yamaha G29s. Now, you probably could have guessed that those were some very expensive builds. For matter of fact, you could have just went out and bought a brand new cart for less than what we had wrapped up in each one of those. So we had this old 1995 Club Car DS that had been sitting out back for quite a few years. And we decided that this would be a perfect candidate to do more of a budget type build on. Now, these old Club Car DSs are pretty easy to find for cheap, especially if they're in non-running condition. But a common issue that a lot of these 290 engines had were that the crankshaft would get worn out by the connecting rods that connect the counterbalancer to the crankshaft. So to fix that, you end up having to buy a whole new crankshaft and all new connecting rods, and then you're typically going to buy an oversized piston along with getting the cylinder board and rebuild the heads. So you could end up spending up to $1,000 or more just trying to rebuild that stock Kawasaki engine. Now, I will do a breakdown on what it costs for us to actually build this cart if you stick around till the end of the video. Now, on top of that, this cart had clutches that were completely shot, it had a starter generator that was seized up, and the stock muffler was completely rusted out. So we made the decision to install a Predator 420, but we didn't want to spend the money to buy any kind of a conversion kit, so we ended up just making everything ourselves to install the engine. To bolt the engine in, we just used a couple of pieces of 1¼ inch square tubing and an engine mount plate. Now, it was pretty simple to weld that up and get the engine bolted in. Then for our clutches, we decided to go with some aftermarket 780 series clutches. Now, on your primary clutch, it's pretty easy to find a clutch that'll slide right onto that crankshaft for the 420 engine. But for the secondary clutch, those are a little bit more tricky to find, as the transaxle on these club cars uses a 7/8 inch keyed shaft. We were able to finally find the clutch that we needed on eBay, and I'll leave a link for that and all the other parts that we used on this build in the description down below. Now, while there is a way to reuse your stock clutch setup, I really wouldn't recommend doing it. Chances are, if the engine's that worn out, if it's still on the original clutches, they're probably in pretty bad condition. And by the time you went through and tried to rebuild those clutches and replace all the worn out parts, you could have just bought a set of 780 clutches and been better off. The 780s really are a better clutch that's going to give you quite a bit more speed and better shifting. Now, to get a little bit more performance out of that Predator 420, we did go ahead and do kind of a stage 1 kit on it. So that involved installing some stiffer valve springs so that we could rev to higher RPMs. Then we removed all of the internal governor components and blocked off the hole. We went ahead and drilled out the main jet on the carburetor to give us a little more fuel and installed a pod style air filter adapter. We also installed the bracket to give us a remote choke cable so we wouldn't have to raise the seat every time that we needed to start the engine. We did go ahead and install a different intake flange that had a fitting on it to run a pulse style fuel pump. That way we didn't have to mess with trying to run any type of an electric fuel pump or a fuel pressure regulator. We could just reuse our stock fuel pump assembly. Now, for a muffler, we wanted to keep this cart as quiet as we could. Now, we knew that going back with a stock style muffler was going to hurt our airflow just a little bit, but we wanted to keep it quiet. Now, we ended up just having to cut off the flange and weld on a flange that would bolt onto our 420 head. Then we were able to modify the mounting brackets just a little bit to be able to reuse our stock muffler mount. We were able to reuse most of our stock throttle pedal and cable assemblies, even reusing the stock throttle cable and just cutting the end off of it to fit our new throttle bracket. Now, to try to help keep our costs down, we went ahead and just did a rattle can paint job on this cart. We just did a good couple of base coats and then did a clear coat over top, and I'm really pretty happy with how that turned out. Then to top it off, we threw a set of 20-inch tall tires on some 10-inch steel wheels with just a nice set of hubcaps. Now, to install a 20-inch tall tire on a Club Car DS like this, you do have to install a 1-inch lift block on the front suspension to help take care of any rubbing issues. Then we threw on a nice set of LED head and tail lights. Now, we did an installation video on how to install these, and I'll leave a link for that in the description down below. Now, unfortunately, on these old Club Car DS's, they used a wooden bottom in their seats. And it's not uncommon for that wood to be just completely rotted out. So we did have to go ahead and replace the whole front seat assembly and the seat back with brand new ones. Now, to make this more of a utility style cart, we decided to just throw some box bed mounting brackets on the back and then cut some 2x6s to make a wooden bed for it. Now, to give you a cost breakdown on what we actually had in this cart, I wanted to split it up a little bit. Now, these costs are not including the original cart itself. We basically got this cart for free, so we didn't have anything in it. But to do everything that we did to this cart, including the engine swap with the Stage 1 kit, the 780 clutches, we did the tires and wheels, the paint job, the light kit, the new seats, we put the bed on the back, we even did new bumpers on it, we did new wheel bearings on the front, we had to replace the brake cables, we had to buy a new muffler for it, new battery. Total, we've got about $2,800 wrapped up in this cart. But if you had a cart that was in better shape than what ours was, and you weren't worried about doing paint or tires and wheels or lights, and you didn't need the seat, you didn't have to buy a muffler, if you were just replacing the engine and clutches, if that's it, if that's all you had to do was the Predator swap and the 780 clutches to be able to run it, and the few other little modifications to make that whole setup work, you would have ended up with right around about $1,000 in doing that conversion. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it would have cost us around $1,000 just to rebuild the stock engine. And that's if we could have reused our old clutches and the old starter generator and we didn't need a new muffler. Just the engine itself would have cost us $1,000. So to be able to do a full conversion like this with the Predator 420 and get the new clutches and have a nice powerful cart that's fun to drive, to do that for less than $1,000 I think is really a good deal. Now overall, I'm really happy with how this cart turned out. It's really a sharp looking cart that runs great for no more money than we've got in it. Now with that bigger engine, it's got a ton of power and top speed around 27 to 28 miles an hour. So for a budget style build like this, I couldn't be happier with how this cart turned out. Now go ahead and leave links in the description down below for all the parts that we used to build this cart. So if you guys are interested in checking those out, just check it out in the links down below. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. If you got some good value out of this video, please hit that thumbs up button. Consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.